Does the way I use an e-mountain bike help me to stay fit when I'm not riding my mountain bike, or is it a waste of time for my fitness? Neil, 42, retired pro mountain biker and now full-time presenter with 3 kids. Likes going fast, hates riding really far for not many good trails. My rides mostly revolve around getting descents. Yes, every so often I like an epic adventure, a day out somewhere remote or planning a route and finding new trails, but my go-to ride is an hour to 2 maximum, probably classed as an enduro ride if you had to. I don't normally plan the routes for my rides. I normally get to the top of the trail, descend something fun, and maybe repeat that 2 or 3 times to see if I can get it as fast as I can. Or other times, I'll jump onto another downhill track. My rides I normally finish when I've had enough, and that's probably about 600 metres to 1,000 metres of descending. The elevation where I ride is only about 250, 300 metres, so the turnaround back to the top's pretty quick. So the distance covered isn't large at all, but it's all about the downhills for me. I'm riding my Canyon Talk On Jazzy Roxon edition, so I've got a lovely paint job on it. It's a big bike. It's got 180mm travel fork, 175 rear suspension, 63.5 head angle. So the numbers tell you the story. This is a proper gravity machine, and it's coming with a 900 watt-hour battery. So it's got some massive climbing and therefore descending capabilities. This is a beefed up gravity bike, so it may not be quite so efficient on the flatter trails. It's got big grippy Pirelli tyres on there. It's got that 900 watt-hours of battery as well, so there's no reason to take it out of boost. So how taxing that is on the climbs is to be seen, but the extra weight definitely means this bike takes a bit of muscling around on the descent, so I expect my heart rate to be getting up on the downhills. Riding to the top on full power doesn't feel very hard, so how much work am I actually doing? Well, I recently did a very similar ride on my normal trail mountain bike, which I don't do very often now, to be honest. I normally jump at the chance to ride my e-bike, mainly because of the time constraints of having 3 kids, but also the speed of the climbing is quite addictive. I do most of my climbing, to be fair, on fire roads or tarmac, although I do like tech climbing. There just isn't that much of it where I ride normally. At the end of an e-bike ride, I do feel tired, but it's more like the fatigue of just riding constantly. I don't normally stop very much at all on an e-bike ride, whereas obviously on a mountain bike ride, I get the tired, achy legs the next day. I don't really get that on e-mountain bike. So let's take a look at the data to see how it stacks up. I'm going to record my ride. I've got my Garmin Fenix 7 watch, which is, amongst other things, a fitness tracker. But I've actually hooked up my external heart rate sensor to this to get a super accurate reading. I'm going to take a look at, obviously, my distances, my average heart rate, my max heart rate, how many calories I've burnt. Also, the Garmin grit score will be quite interesting. So I'm going to record a normal ride on my e-mountain bike. We'll take a look at the data. I need to emphasise that the driving force of my typical 1 hour ride is as many downhill runs as possible, hence the shameless use of turbo with plenty of fuel in the tank. But how does that compare if I did a similar ride on a trail bike? In simple terms, I'll do less descending, 3.5 runs compared to 9, and spend more of that precious 1 hour climbing. Bear in mind that of course on an e-mountain bike you can actually ride in a lesser power mode and get far more of a workout, but of course I've got 900 watt hours and my intentions are quite specific to get to the top as fast as possible and save my energy for maximum speed down. Because the downhill runs are short on this particular loop, my aerobic and anaerobic workout will be a lot less than if I were doing 5-minute all-out descents at a proper bike park. But let's have a look at that data in detail. All right, so I have the data. I also have a Steve Jones here to quiz me.
Do you know what? Thank you so much for dragging me into this.
Because I've got the data from a load of different rides, and I think there's a lot of points to talk about within this. So I've recorded other rides for previous eMBN videos. I also did a trail bike ride on my normal mountain bike, and then I've done an e-mountain bike ride. So I'm comparing things. So how far I rode, similar-ish, 26 kilometers on the downhill bike, that was a lot. On the trail bike, I only did 13k. On the e-bike, I did 20k. So the ride times are similar-ish, an hour and 24 on the downhill versus an hour and 19 trail versus an hour and 30.
Can I ask you, you said hour and 20, that's actually descending time.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot. The thing is, people forget, like, riding downhill is incredibly physical and demanding.
Yeah, which I think is interesting, but actually what I really want to compare is my normal trail bike ride versus my e-bike ride.
And how did that go?
Well, I did obviously a lot more descending. So I did 1,000 meters in an hour and 13 versus 648. I did 9 runs compared to 3.5. But the interesting thing here is my max heart rate was 177 on the trail bike. My actual max is probably 183. But the max I got to an e-bike was quite a bit lower, 155.
That's quite disappointing.
And the average, 155 on the mountain bike, 127 on the e-bike. And calories, so this is the one I'm kind of looking at. I did burn 909 calories in just over an hour on the trail bike, but 577 on the e-bike. Garmin give you a really good training score, which is interesting. So on the mountain bike, I was in my VO2 max, I was improving that. Whereas on the e-bike, it was base.
Yeah, I get that, I think e-mountain biking definitely improves your aerobic base, doesn't it? And I can see that you're not...
However, Steve, because it breaks it down. So actually, on the mountain bike, I scored 5. So that puts you really high. Actually, that is overreaching. So I couldn't have done many of those. Otherwise, I would have trained myself into a hole. Whereas on the e-bike, it was scored at 2.7, which is maintaining. And anaerobic on the trail bike, it was 2.8. So that is improving. Whereas on the e-bike, it was 0.2, no benefit.
So this is kind of largely disappointing data for in terms of e-bike fitness. But you see, that data is the total opposite to mine. Like,
that's interesting. We've talked about this.
Total opposite, because on we did this video on the channel a month ago where I rode a full power bike compared to a mid-assist bike. My average heart rate was, I think it was 135 compared to 130. And what I find on an eMTB these days is I'm not used to it. I'm actually plodding.
Yeah.
My enthusiasm levels are down, hence I tend to go slower. But what I want to quiz you on that, is it not trail dependent?
Absolutely. There's lots and lots of caveats to this. I would say this is where I ride. It's all fire road climbs. I very rarely do technical climbs where it is more physical. And I am probably chilling on the climbs because it's all about the down. What I've realised subconsciously is I'm probably bombing the downhills and then recovering on the climbs. Let's say I'm a bit younger than you are. I'm a bit lighter than you are. My bike has got a big enough battery that I know I'm only going to ride for an hour and a half top, so I'm always in full power.
I see my daughter riding the bike, and I can see she's putting hardly any effort into it. When Louis rides the e-bikes, weight has a massive factor, whereas me at 95 kilos, even in turbo, I'm putting some effort into it.
So One thing I will say is after I got those results, I was like, I need to go back and do this again. So I did a bonus ride where I thought, right, I'm doing another hour here.
Any excuse.
And I'm going to put some effort in and I'm going to ride as hard as I can, pedal as hard as I can everywhere. So I did do that and it did up my scores. So my aerobic went from just maintaining. So a normal e-bike ride for me just maintains my fitness that I already have. This more intense one impacted. So it went from a 2.7 up to a 3.1 aerobic score. And I burnt 348 calories in an hour. So it's still relatively low, but I was working harder. My average heart rate was up to 135. And also, I've got to say, I'm average-ish fitness. I was a super fit racer. I'm not.
I think we'll be the judge of that.
Now I'm a very average fitness. And
I think you're above that.
But I would rather save my efforts for the downhill. And actually, when I did that extra ride, it's not realistic. I probably will chill a bit. But interesting is fine for me. It's probably what I already suspected, is that e-bike riding, the way I do it on my hill where I ride, maintains my fitness. It doesn't improve it.
Isn't that the great, that's your conclusion?
Yep.
Isn't that the great thing though about e-mountain bikes? It allows you to do a certain type of ride, which is fine. You can do, you can do fire road climbs, whatever. I actually like riding tech climbs. So for example, I was in Finale recently and there was the power stage, which is the first ever e-bike power stage. It's insanely steep. It's really technical. Once I'd done that half a dozen times for filming, I could hardly breathe.
You know what?
I could hardly breathe.
I totally do that. What I find though is any times I try and do that where I ride, it's riding old downhill tracks the wrong way. So I don't do it that much because of obviously the dangers of doing that. So I would love that to be a bigger part of my riding. But it's not. So that's why it plays out in these scores a bit.
But interesting. It's nice. It's great that we've got two opposite results to ride an e-mountain bike.
Yeah, and obviously I could turn the power down and I could put more effort in, but not that I'm saying I want to do that. I really love sessioning my downhill tracks and accepting that I'm not getting fitter. So,
or you could put on even more weight and it'd become more effort.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, jump into comments. I'd love to know if you ride e-bikes for fun, for fitness. Do you ride differently to me? Do you find it improves your fitness? I'm sure there'll be some debate, so jump in and I'll try and answer them as well.
Thanks, fantastic subject.
Yeah, thanks
really
for watching.
Good.